Physical Science Module 10 lecture video. So today we're going to talk about Newton's three laws of motion and forces. So Newton's first law is that an object at rest will remain at rest and an object in motion will remain in motion in a constant velocity straight line forever unless they are acted upon by an outside force. This is also called the law of inertia. Anything with mass has inertia, which means that it will resist a change in its velocity. This was groundbreaking science because in our experience here on Earth, there are forces that cause it to appear to us that things don't continue in a straight line, constant velocity forever, right? We don't observe them being acted upon by a force, right? If I throw this pen, it doesn't continue in a constant straight line forever, right? It falls to the ground and then it stops. So we don't really observe the part of Newton's first law where something's in motion and continues in a straight line, constant velocity forever. Now we do observe that things that are at rest remain at rest unless something acts upon them. But because friction and air resistance are constantly acting upon the matter that we interact with, things don't continue in a straight line, constant velocity motion forever because friction and air resistance are outside forces acting upon them. So this was shocking to people when Newton said it because up until this point, everyone thought that matter had a preferred state, that rest was preferred over movement. And that's not the case. If you're in space where there's no air resistance and no friction, and you throw a ball, it doesn't do what we expect it to do, right? It doesn't do that parabolic motion that we expect something to do when you throw it on Earth because there's not gravity, there's not air resistance, and there's not friction. And so when you throw that pen, like if I had done that, and I had thrown that pen like that, it would have continued in a straight line forever in space. But we don't experience that. So matter does not have a preferred state. It will remain at rest or remain at constant velocity in a straight line unless acted upon by an outside force. That could be gravity, that could be air resistance, that could be friction, that could be just something colliding with it. But yeah, so we'll do some demonstrations in class to demonstrate inertia, the fact that all material, all matter resists changing velocity. Newton's second law is most easily stated by an equation. Does my pen work? All right. So in its simplest form, force is mass times acceleration. That's Newton's second law. We can say sometimes there's more than one force acting upon something, right? Like with this pen, I could pull up with one hand and down with the other, and it would have two forces acting upon it, right? I could push with one finger and push with the other finger, and it has two forces acting on it. And so this Greek letter sigma says that the sum of all the forces acting on an object will be equal to that object's mass times its acceleration. So this equation you'll use constantly, like the rest of your life in science. It's very useful. But yes, you add up all the forces. So if I'm, say, pushing, let's find something I can rest it on here. If I'm pushing my pen along a surface, I'd rather have something that won't be rolling. Let's see. All right, well, this pen won't roll. If I'm pushing my pen along a surface, what forces are acting? I have to add up all the forces acting on the pen so that I can find its mass times its acceleration, right? So not only is the pushing force from my finger acting on the pen, but friction is opposing the motion of the pen, right? So I could turn the equation here into the force of me pushing the pen with my finger minus the frictional force opposing the motion of the pen is equal to the pen's mass times the pen's acceleration. Okay. Newton's third law. Newton's third law says that for every force, there's an equal and opposite force. And so what that means is if I apply a force to my board, right, I push on board, the equal and opposite force is board pushes back on me. I push on board, board pushes on me. Now, gravity, of course, we know is one of the fundamental forces of nature. Gravity is a force that pulls this pen down, right? So Earth pulls pen down. What's the equal and opposite force? So you just reverse it, right? Pen pulls Earth up. Okay, Earth pulls pen down, pen pulls Earth up. You can move the world just by dropping a pen. Did you know? But of course, if we combine Newton's third and second laws, we can see why we don't notice the Earth moving, we just notice the pen moving, right? So when I say like force on the pen is equal to force on the Earth, right? So for every force, Earth pulls pen down, there's an equal and opposite force. Pen pulls Earth up, right? So force of pen equals force on Earth. So if we look at Newton's second law, force is mass times acceleration, we could say, okay, well, the mass times the acceleration of the pen, so mass of the pen in this case compared to mass of the Earth, times acceleration, right? Big acceleration for the pen falling is equal to, so mass times acceleration of the pen is equal to mass, huge mass for the Earth, times acceleration of the Earth, right? So this is pen, this is Earth. So we don't notice the Earth accelerating up toward the pen, right? Because the pen is a tiny mass and the Earth is a huge mass. So the pen will have a huge acceleration and the Earth will have practically zero, but not quite zero acceleration, right? But for every force, there's an equal and opposite force, right? Earth pulls pen down, pen pulls Earth up, force. So we did touch on friction just briefly, but we can, well, I'll use this pen that doesn't roll, right? We can say, we have a pen here. If I start to tip my board up, we can observe that friction alone is holding the pen still, right? Gravity is pulling the pen downward on the board, but the frictional force, right? So gravity is going this way. The frictional force is opposing the motion, and if I do tip the board far enough, the pen will begin to slide. Hopefully. There we go. So you can see that there comes a point when the downward pull of gravity overcomes the frictional force and the pen begins to slide, right? So you can overcome friction and move something, right? So I can't say, oh, well, if I push on board, board pushes on me, so there's no chance of me moving this board because it has to be equal and opposite, right? So friction can be overcome, and I could, if I really tried, move the board that way. But in that case, the board would still be pushing back at me and I would be pushing on the board. I would just overcome friction and be able to accelerate the board, right, with the force that I'm applying to it. And that would be equal to the board's mass, where the force of me pushing divided by the mass of the board would be the acceleration of the board. So friction is affected by several factors. So friction is affected by the mass of an object. If I like have a bin and I keep it on a particular surface, when I add, if I pile things into the bin, the frictional force will increase. So mass, when mass increases, friction will increase. So when mass increases, then friction increases. And I'll always use a capital F for the like pushing type force that I'm applying to something, and a lowercase f for frictional force. Friction is also affected by the makeup of the two surfaces that are in contact with each other. There has to be, contact between two surfaces for friction to occur. So if the two surfaces are very smooth, friction will be less. If they're very bumpy and rough, friction will be more on average. Right? So if the surface is rough or sticky, like silicone or grippy. In fact, my pen, I think, stayed on the board because it has this sticky silicone grip with high friction. So if the surface is rougher, then friction will be higher-ish. And so friction comes from surfaces, even smooth glass surfaces at the atomic or molecular level have bumps and grooves, right? No surface is perfectly flat. Glass looks like it's perfectly flat to us when we look at it, but actually it's made up of bumps and grooves. And when two surfaces are in contact with each other, let's see if I have another working pen, then we end up with these bumps and grooves kind of having little collisions, like riding your bike over potholes, right? And it will slow you down, right? As two surfaces move past each other with friction, those bumps and grooves have little collisions, and it steals some of the energy of motion, which is the frictional force. Also, the electrons on the surface of both of the substances repel each other. And so you get a little electrostatic force as they move past each other, and that also resists motion and increases friction. So the bump and groove or the electrostatic interactions cause friction. And then also, if something, if two surfaces are stationary relative to each other, then friction between them is higher than if those same two surfaces are moving relative to each other. So stationary surfaces have higher friction relative to each other. So for example, if I have my board and pen, right? Okay, so right now they're not moving relative to each other. So they have a higher amount of friction between them than once I get them moving. Actually, friction is lower once they're moving. And again, that's due to those electrostatic forces. They get all settled in, the bumps and grooves get settled in when the two things are stationary relative to each other. Once you get them moving, then there's not time for that settling, getting to the lowest energy state. And so they're easier to continue moving once they are moving. So what happens to the energy that friction steals as two surfaces move relative to each other? Well, you can pretty quickly figure that out. If you move your hands quickly relative to each other, what do you feel? So heat. And you also hear sound. Sometimes things even produce light, not your hands. Although heat is basically light, as you'll learn later in the year. So friction steals some energy of motion and converts that to heat, mostly heat. So let's see. So forces. We've talked about forces, the frictional force, objects, being in motion and having a force acting upon them, equal and opposite forces. We've used the word force a lot today. So a force is a push or pull that changes an object's velocity. And force, just like velocity and acceleration, force is also a vector quantity. So anytime you talk about a force in a problem, you need to give it a direction. Force is always a vector quantity and needs direction. So force has a complex unit, kind of like acceleration, right? Acceleration has a unit of meter per second squared. Velocity has meter per second. So you have multiple units combined to make a unit. That's a compound unit. So force is a mass times a distance divided by a time squared. Right. So in metric units, SI units, a force would be a mass unit, so it's a kilogram in standard metric units, times a distance, that'll be a meter, divided by a time squared, so we'll go with seconds squared in this case. So standard metric units, a force is a kilogram meter per second squared. And they have actually renamed this whole big unit in honor of Isaac Newton. And so they call the kilogram meter per second squared the Newton. So when you have that as a unit, you can just use a capital N instead of writing out kilogram meter per second squared. So our standard metric force unit is the Newton. In America, remember, for our mass unit, we use the slug, right? So in America, force is going to be a slug. Our standard distance unit in America is the foot, and our time, luckily, is at least the same. So in America, a force unit is a slug foot per second squared, which we have renamed something at least familiar, the pound. And we abbreviate the pound lb, which is from the Latin and doesn't make a lot of sense to us today. So your abbreviation for pound is lb, and a pound is a slug foot per second squared. There are other force units like the dyne, which I think is what, a gram centimeter per second squared, which is like 10 flies landing on your finger or something. A dyne is really tiny. And you can use things that are outside of the standard as well, or you can just use any mass times any distance divided by any time square. Right? So you could do, a milligram, what's the distance? Kilometer divided by hour squared. Like you can use any of those, but the standard would be the kilogram meter per second squared, which is the Newton, or the slug foot per second squared, which is the pound. Let's see. If he gives you a math problem where there's two choices for your coefficient of friction, then you're going to use the coefficient of kinetic friction if the two surfaces are moving relative to each other, and you'll use the coefficient of static friction if the two surfaces are stationary relative to each other. So we need to do some math problems to kind of catch us up on that and how to use the math in this module. You also will have, of course, your study guide and your summary, which I want you to do before you check them on the video, as well as you'll have a quest for Module 10 and an EAP for Module 10. So EAP means extra practice problems, because I want to make sure you get enough practice. So let's see. I think we have covered everything that's critically important in the lecture. So I'm going to come back with another video for the study guide and math, and then we'll have videos for the quest and the EAP, but hopefully we'll have lots of class time to go over those as well. So